Welcome into another MLS Monday by Scarves and Spikes. Tyler Pilgrim here alongside Henry Higuita.
I made it.
Late. What's up, buddy?
It's all good, man. I had to make an entrance for my first time on MLS Monday, but yeah, we're doing well, man. How's your Monday?
Cold. It is a little chilly here in Atlanta. But no, we Thanksgiving. I'm still kind of recovering from all the food, all the really good food. How was yours?
Yeah, pretty much the same. We went over to a friend's house, and apparently it was the guy's first time making turkey, but it was amazing. I'll tell you. How
Was
about
it
you?
fried or like roast?
No, I don't even know how he made it because I don't really know a whole lot about cooking. Admittedly, like the most complex thing I've ever cooked is scrambled eggs, but but like it tasted really, really good. Oh, and they also made like this ham with like little pineapple things. Like I don't even know, but it tasted pretty darn good. So no, my Thanksgiving was awesome, man.
Nice. My wife makes like a pineapple ham with like a brown sugar glaze that goes over it. We usually, because we can only do so much food at one holiday, usually that one's more like a Christmas thing or a New Year's thing, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's good stuff. All right. So we obviously have plenty to talk about. The MLS Conference Finals wrapped up this past weekend. The MLS Cup, the actual final, is finally set out in Los Angeles. So we're going to dive into it. We have Jake Zivin, who's going to be commentating on the game. He'll be joining us here in a little bit. And as usual, scarvesandspikes.com. You'll go check it out. We have all the Atlanta United news, and we'll have obviously other MLS stuff. And when we can do national team stuff, it'll be on there as well. We have our player ratings articles coming out kind of every day, every other day or so right now. So Pedro Amador went out today. Brad Guzan was a few days ago. But you'll have plenty of Atlanta content coming. I'm sure there's going to be news dropping very, very soon. So scarvesandspikes.com. Go to the website. If you scroll down, actually, you can put your email in and get all the articles as they come out straight to your inbox. So super easy. Go check out patreon.com/scarvesandspikes. Get on there, get on board, come hang out with us in the Discord. Lots of content coming that way too, especially here in the off season. Go get you a mug, go to the shop, get you a hoodie because it's freezing right now. Quite literally, it's almost 32 degrees outside. Go dive into it. If enough people ask, maybe I'll extend the Black Friday deal / Cyber Monday. It's actually still going on right now. So go check out our social media. There's a code. So with that though, Henry, we have 2 games in the past to talk about and 1 future game. And we'll get Jake in here in a little bit, kind of dive into his thoughts. But while it's just us, I guess let's start with Eastern Conference. What were your kind of initial thoughts and overall as you viewed it from the MLS Espanol side of things?
My thoughts was that it was very boring. I mean, yeah. I know I shouldn't say that about MLS pays me and all, but either way, honestly, I was kind of, I guess, disappointed with both conference finals because there was 2 goals between them. I was expecting more action, but at the same time, seeing the way Orlando had been playing, it didn't surprise me that they weren't able to find the score sheet. We talked about it a little bit, but in the semis against Atlanta, the goal that Ramiro Enrique finds is kind of that, in the box scramble, bounces off of Gregerson, and then it's smashed in. Okay, it's kind of a jammy goal, I guess you could say. Orlando just had not a whole lot in terms of chance creation in that conference final. And at the end of the day, for me, it was the fact that Ojeda was playing a little bit too further up. I would have liked to see him play a little bit deeper where he's actually pulling the strings. It looked to me like in the second half, it was almost deployed as a false 9.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain it, but he was way further up than he should have been, in my opinion. And even when you brought on Maguire and Muriel, it just your problem at that point was still the chance creation. Like you couldn't get the ball into the 18, and so Orlando is a solid team, and Pareja has an awesome coach. I saw someone saying like, what are the odds that Pareja gets sacked? I'm like, no, he's not getting sacked. Like he's still a great coach. Orlando's a solid team, and they're still going to be competitive. It's just that Red Bulls on the day were better, and at the end of the day, it was a fine margin. It was that 1 goal margin. So yeah, no, I was expecting more out of that final, but I think the right team won at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think to me, it felt like one of those matches where Orlando, it's almost insult to injury, right? Because Orlando had 2 phenomenal counter opportunities that they just totally shafted.
Facundo Torres is still having nightmares, by the way.
Oh yeah, he will be for a long, long time. And it was rough. It really was. It was one of those, because in the first half, I thought Orlando was really growing into it really well. I mean, it wasn't that it was all Orlando, but it seemed like they were kind of getting comfortable. And you kind of felt like, all right, well, they had that one really good Facu Torres counter, and he just, I mean, of course, you got to give credit to goalkeeping where goalkeeping is due, like 100%. But I mean, you have to do better in those situations, right? You just have to, especially in the playoffs. So, but then, yeah, you get into that second half, and Red Bulls have been difficult to score on in the playoffs. And the fact that in the past 20 matches, I think that was the stat, the past 20 matches that the Red Bulls have played, they've only won 2 before the playoffs. That's crazy. And then for them to now be going to MLS Cup final is just, it's off the chain. It makes it a little bit harder from an Atlanta perspective to swallow, because even going back to before this match, like Orlando didn't play a good game against Atlanta. They just played a game that had a dinky goal, and it was all that they needed, because Atlanta was just not doing what they needed to create opportunities. They had no shots on goal. So for then Orlando to go up against a Red Bulls team that, I mean, it's not that they're known for being defensively stout, but they can frustrate you and make it difficult. For them to then go into that one and not do much better and then ultimately end up losing is just a hard pill to swallow for Atlanta fans, I think. But that's just the way it is. I mean, that's soccer, and especially MLS. That's just the way it rolls sometimes. So then jumping over to...
Hold on. I want to add one more thing. I forgot to add. It was a little bit shocking to me to see Orlando concede so much possession at home against a team that had, I think, the 3rd lowest average possession rate this season. Like New York Red Bulls had, I think, the 3rd lowest average possession when I checked. And they were dominating possession in that game. And it's like, dude, Orlando plays better with the ball. So what's going on there, man? You have every advantage. You're at home. Like, what's going on? And at the end of the day, Red Bulls press, yes, that makes things hard, but I think Orlando was also making their own lives a little bit difficult, just kind of the way that they were set up and the way that they just weren't getting things right on the field. And at the end of the day, I mean, that gives Red Bulls what they want. They want to force you into mistakes. They want to make you uncomfortable. And so, yeah, it's just that was just something that stood out to me as weird.
Yeah, I think there's a school of thought out there with teams like Red Bulls that don't value possession as much as, some teams do, where when you're playing against them, it can sometimes benefit you to maybe concede possession and have them play the game that they're not used to, right? Like have them keep a little bit more possession, because when you don't want the ball and you're used to hitting on counters and pressing high and all this kind of stuff, for then to be given the ball and say, hey, go do something with it, it can throw teams off. But in this case, I mean, it obviously, now whether or not that was Oscar Pareja's vision and choice, I doubt it, but there's something to be said that, in some cases a team can benefit from maybe doing that, but ultimately you have to play your game, right? Especially at home, especially in the playoffs, you have to play your game. So, all right, with that, we'll put a pin in it there, and we'll just go straight into the Western Conference stuff, and then we'll jump back over to this Orlando one with Jake as we get him on. Then we'll dive into the preview. With that being said, Apple TV, MLS commentator, friend of the show, Jake Zivin. What's up, buddy?
Hey guys, what's up? What's up? Great to see you. One game to go, huh?
Hey, we're almost there.
Man, there was a moment a few weeks ago when I would have thought we were going to be here talking about the Cinderella Atlanta United getting ready to pull off try to finish the most incredible run that this league has ever seen in a postseason.
Alas. So close.
Yes.
So close. I mean, nobody expected it though.
No.
We kept saying they're playing with house money. Just enjoy the ride while it lasts, hoping it lasted all the way to the end. But I mean, a lot of historical moments in this offseason for Atlanta.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a big offseason, right? Man, Garth has got a lot of flexibility to play with. He's got some big decisions to make. And I imagine there's a lot of excitement for 2025.
Yeah. And I think that's just to hit on Atlanta real quick. I think that's part of kind of what the fans are looking at. You know, at the end of the regular season, Atlanta fans were down in the dumps, admittedly. Like It was a frustrating time. And this playoff run has given, I don't want to say just that it's hope, but it's you have something to look forward to because you know that there is something there that works, and now they just have to fine tune it and get it right. And what those changes are, I mean, we have ideas, but there's a lot that Garth is going to have to consider for sure.
Yeah. Amen, man. Anyway, to MLS Cup, huh?
Well, yeah. So I guess starting like just to go back, diving into the conference finals really quick, starting with, I guess we'll start with the West Coast.
Sure.
That's the most recent. And
we called that game. Yeah.
Yes. Give us your overall thoughts. What you saw, what went down, the atmosphere, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Well, look, atmosphere was awesome, man. It's really good to see Dignity Health Sports Park, formerly known as the StubHub Center, formerly known as the Home Depot Center, back rocking like it was this weekend. And it has been. This year, certainly as it's gone on and as the playoffs have gone on, that atmosphere and that energy and that electricity just kind of ramps up as you'd expect. But it's good to have it back. It's good for the league to have the Galaxy back, being a team playing in a fortress and being the big club that they were for so long. Taylor and I were kind of reflecting after this game, and to think back 10 years ago, the last time the Galaxy played an MLS Cup, the last time they played in a conference final, I think you would have been able to get really, really long odds on the Galaxy taking 10 years to get back to that point, because they were the juggernaut and they were the team that the whole league went through, and certainly the West, but even MLS, right? Like they won 3 or 4 MLS Cups from 11 to 14. But even in 12 and even in the years around that, and in 2009 when they were upset by Salt Lake and MLS Cup, like they were still that big team that you had to get through. And they were the most, I think, intimidating team in the league. And they have not been for a decade. So for them to be back there, I think it's great for that club. It's great for that fan base. And I think it's good for the league in general to have the Galaxy, the league's original super club and super team, back in this stage. So the atmosphere was electric and fitting of the game. I thought the game was really interesting. I thought it was really good. 1-0. Maybe, the neutral fan wants to see 4-3 or 4-2 or 6 goals from the Galaxy as they've done. But I thought Seattle played as well as they could. I think Christian Roldan's quote after the game to me summed it up. They played they played well enough not to lose, but they did enough not to lose, but they didn't do enough to win, right? Like they came in with their game plan, and that was how they had to do it against a team like the Galaxy. And given what the Sounders are in this current form and some injuries and availability issues that they had for this game, they kept it tight. Albert Rusnak has a chance around the 60th minute that it's not the easiest chance. There's some bodies in the way, but he's got time. He's 15 yards out. He kind of hits it right at McCarthy. I think he's got to finish that. I think you're a team in the conference final. He's your season MVP. He's a designated player. He's got to finish that. And if he does, maybe we're talking about Seattle hosting the Red Bulls in MLS Cup. But that was kind of, it was a game where it kind of felt like, okay, Seattle was going to they were going to get that one chance or maybe 2, and they had to finish one of them. And if they didn't, then it's probably going to be the Galaxy's. And it took the Galaxy a lot longer than I think most people would have thought to score their goal. But they got their one, and that was enough. Obviously, the big, other than that result, the big storyline after the game is Ricky Puig. And for him to play 30 minutes on a torn ACL, for him to provide the game-winning assist, the conference-winning assist on a torn ACL, it's incredible. It's the stuff of legends. He's a big loss for the Galaxy. It's a big loss for the game, for MLS Cup, right? Because he is such a star. But man, heroic from him. Something that will never be forgotten, I'm sure, in Los Angeles.
Jake, really quick, just wanted to ask you also, you brought up Ricky Puig, and he's going to miss MLS Cup, unfortunately, though he 100% deserves to be there. And he's been the little engine of this LA Galaxy team. You've added the talent of Joseph Paintsil. You've added the talent of Gabriel Peck. But it's kind of been Puig that's been central to all of what LA Galaxy is doing. Who needs to step up now in MLS Cup for the Galaxy to really, put the cherry on top of this season?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting decision for Greg Vanney. That might not be a decision, because I think if Marco Reus is healthy and fit, then it's probably the obvious is to slide him into Ricky Puig's role. And then you're bringing in either Mark Delgado or maybe Gaston Brugman to play next to Edwin Cerrillo. And Brugman's a little more of an attacking player. Delgado is more of an 8, right? But and they're not a like for Royce in that role, but it's a great midfield. Mark, the word that we got at the beginning of the second half is that Marco Reus had groin tightness, and he came out of the game. It looked like he was kind of icing something after their conference semifinal. So that is something that might be of concern for Greg Vanney, and he might not be able to start Marco Reus. But even if he doesn't start Marco Reus, there's still great options. I mean, to me, you've got really 3 options of who takes Ricky Puig's spot, and then if Reus is also out, and then you've got 3 options for the 2. It's Brugman, it's Delgado, and it's Diego Fagundes. And those are really good options to have. When we talked to Greg Vanney before the Western Conference Final, he kind of lamented the fact that there's guys on his bench that he feels deserve to play, but you can only start 11 players. And it's a good problem for a manager to have, and kind of the opposite of what Brian Schmetzer had going into that game, because of injuries, he just kind of had to figure out a strategy of how to make it work. And same thing against LAFC in the conference semifinal. Greg Vanney has riches on that bench, riches in his group to pick from. So I'd expect it to be 2 of the 3, I guess 2 of the 4 if you include Reus, right? Reus, Fagundes, Cerrillo, Delgado, which 2 of those guys start this game probably depends on Reus's health. And then what Greg Vanney wants. Look, the Galaxy 4-1-1 this season when Ricky Puig didn't start in regular season play. They won 3 in a row in June when Ricky Puig was out, with essentially Diego Fagundes just sliding in like for like with Ricky Puig. And they looked really good at that time. And there was a little bit of a narrative heading into their July 4th game at the Rose Bowl. Are the Galaxy better without Ricky Puig? Which is a weird thing to say, but Diego Fagundes is going to be a little more disciplined tactically. I mean, Ricky wants the ball everywhere, and that's what makes him such an enthralling player to watch, because he's wants to be the man, the conductor, the maestro, picking up the ball off the center backs, getting the ball in the wing, getting the ball in the pocket, everywhere, right? But for a manager, if maybe you want things to be a little more structured, that might not be the best. So look, that discussion went to the wayside as the season went on. I mean, they are a much better team with Ricky Puig on the field. But they've still shown this year that they can be successful without him, and they'll have to do that in MLS Cup.
It's funny because I think looking at this Galaxy team going back to the beginning of the year in the offseason, I had this conversation with one of our good podcast friends from News Across the Galaxy. You look at a team that has gone through as many changes in one offseason. I mean, and then you can go into the summer as well. But I mean, from almost dead last to the favorite in one season is MLS in its purest form, in my opinion. But, I think Ricky Puig is that guy from an Atlanta perspective that I think you wanted Almada to be when he was here, right? Like,
yes,
that was
great comparison.
Similar.
Yeah.
And you have this guy who we used to get so frustrated watching Almada because we would be like, why are you dropping back so far to get the ball? because then it wouldn't progress the way it needed to. But then Ricky Pooch is over here for the Galaxy doing it so well. He like begs for the ball from his center backs and his goalkeeper at times just so he can make things happen. And it's just such a fun talent to watch, and a little bit of envy coming from this, trying to, keep myself. But
I agree with you on that Almada comparison. And I think when Thiago was at his best in Atlanta, he was doing those things, right? But he never, where Ricky is constant. Yeah. And, yes, there might be some, hey, Ricky, go further up the field, but he's the best ball progressor, I think, in Major League Soccer, right? I mean, when he gets on the ball and his ability to break one or two lines by just bursting forward and holding off defenders is incomparable in this league at the moment. And then make the right pass, right? Because it's one thing to like beat a couple guys at speed, but then if you're going a little too fast and you lose it, but then he can make the right play at speed. And yeah, we've seen Almada do that at times. I think it was in Miami this year when he was really good, right? Which was one of his kind of last acts, at least kind of last starring acts in that game, when I thought he kind of had that similar influence. He really wanted to be the guy on the ball. Yep. And in control. But that's Ricky every game, right? I mean, he is consistent as can be in that regard. And it's wonderful to watch. I think he's, again, he's been a thrilling player to watch, and he loves the big game. So you could tell, look, in retrospect, particularly, we stayed on the air throughout the entire trophy presentation, and a couple minutes after the final whistle, there was the shot of Ricky with a towel over his head, and Craig Vanny was embracing him. And we don't want to speculate in those moments, right? Because you don't know what's happened. And so I kind of went with the generic line of like, he's emotional Ricky Pooch, and Taylor picks it up, and we're talking about, I think because he is an emotional guy, right? And he is not afraid to talk smack. He's not afraid to celebrate in ways that can be antagonistic. And he's not, afraid. So to see him being emotional about winning and like bringing the Galaxy to this point would not have been surprising. But then after a few minutes, and when he went into the locker room and he wasn't coming back out for the trophy presentation, he wasn't there and they had to wait for him, I think it became pretty apparent that something was wrong. And in retrospect, of course, he knew, right? He had tears in his eyes throughout those entire kind of 10, 15 minutes as he's out on the field and as we're staying in the building and showing the trophy presentation and doing interviews and all that. And it's devastating for him, man, because he would have loved that stage and he would have been the main character in that game, as he is so frequently when he plays, particularly, in the big games. So again, it's a loss for the game. It's a loss for the occasion. It's a loss for the Galaxy, but it's not one that they can't overcome.
Yeah. Next, I kind of also wanted to bring up another guy that's, he started to shine last season a little bit, but he's really taken off this season. It's Dejan Joveljic. Before he was kind of stuck behind Chicharito, and now he's loose, man, and he's scoring like crazy. I pull up his tally from this season. I think he's got 20
goals all competitions. Yeah, it was his 20th goal to win the conference championship.
I mean, yeah, it's huge for the team. How important is he going to be now in MLS Cup now that Ricky's gone?
I think what you said about Chicharito, he kind of needed Chicharito to get out of the way, right? Which is, it's like kind of a harsh way of putting it for such a wonderful player like Chicharito was, but Joveljic was a highly regarded. It was a big signing for them, and man, like he wasn't able to be his best. I think he wanted to be, he's a confident player as well, right? And there were a couple times over the past few years where he'd say stuff in the media where you could tell like he really wanted to be the guy for the Galaxy, and he wanted that burden of being the 9. And it all came together this year. Yes, Chicharito is no longer there. However, he also has Joseph Paintsel and Gabriel Peck added to this attack. So just in general, everything is elevated because he wasn't producing like this in the second half of last year when Chicharito was out with a torn ACL, and it was kind of his job. But it was an incredible offseason from the LA Galaxy, from Will Kuntz, and Dan Beckerman, the president of the club, said during the trophy presentation to Arsasha Kleshin, Will Kuntz deserves to be the executive of the year. There's a good argument there. 7 players that started in the conference final were not on the roster a year ago. An 8th, and Edwin Cerrillo was acquired after Will Kuntz took over permanently last summer. So they completely remade this team. And like you said, or, like we said a couple minutes ago, yeah, that's MLS. It's what I love about the league, and that you can do that. But look, you can turn over teams in European soccer as well, right? With enough money. So that's not unique to American soccer or American sports. But the Galaxy have done a wonderful job with it. For Joveljic, for me, I think he always had this in him. I don't necessarily think he's leveling up, other than he is becoming a beneficiary of the entire attack leveling up. If he had, gotten these opportunities 2 years ago, I think he would produce similarly, is what I'm trying to say. If he's playing with Peck and Paintsel, instead of, they missed on their previous 2 big winger signings, Samuel Grandsir and Kevin Cabral, who had 2 of the worst underperforming of expected goals in the league for their time in the Galaxy. And to go from that to Peck and Paintsel, I mean, what a difference in LA. And yeah, so it's a fantastic attack. And I think Joveljic benefiting from that, in addition to, himself, his quality of play leveling up, but it's just the whole thing for me.
So jumping over, I was going to ask you really quick. I was thinking about it. I was going back and forth. Who was your player of the match for Seattle? Because I have one that just kind of stood out to me, maybe as a surprise, but I wanted to get your opinion.
I'll go Nuhu
Okay.
because to me, it was such an intriguing 1v1 battle between him and Gabriel Peck, and that was his assignment. And Brian Schmetzer, and it's a decision now, I think, for Sandro Schwartz to make an MLS Cup, but look, Brian Schmetzer played 5 in the back, 3 center backs and wing backs against LAFC. Perfect plan. I mean, brilliant for him to get them to that point. It worked. Shorthanded, it all worked. And then he chose to go back to 4 against the Galaxy because he wanted Nuhu one-on-one with Gabriel Peck. Gabriel Peck's an incredible player, right? Yep. I mean, I can't decide who the MVP of the Galaxy is, whether it's Ricky Puig or whether it's Peck. I voted in their team kind of media voting. I went Ricky Puig just because of how influential he is at every moment. But his numbers aren't the same without Peck. Peck's numbers aren't the same without Puig. They are so mutually beneficial. They don't necessarily both need each other, but they both bring the best out of each other. And Peck's danger on that wing is incredible. I mean, I think he's the best winger in MLS. If you don't count Lionel Messi as a winger, he'll start there, but he'll go wherever he wants. I don't count him as a winger. So for them to shut down Peck was extremely important for the Sounders because they had to keep it tight, and that was Nuhu's job, and he did. I mean, it might be the best 1v1 defender against the best 1v1 winger in Major League Soccer. And it was a really wonderful battle, I thought. So I'll go Nuhu, but everybody was great defensively. Obed Vargas, I thought, really shined in these playoffs, and he broke out as a young player who really showed why, he's already been capped by Mexico and why they wanted him to make the one-time switch from the United States. The center backs are great. Jackson Reagan's been fantastic. And Nathan stepped up into his spot. The guy had not started a game since the season opener against LAFC. It had been over 9 months since he had started the game. He played like 90 minutes for the Sounders first team all season long, thrown into the starting 11. And I thought, he did quite well. So I think defensively, everything was really good from Seattle. They the goal comes on a giveaway. Alex Roldan, a sloppy pass, and it's the one moment. They needed more from their attack, and that's going to be the story of Seattle's offseason is who can they add to bring more out of their attack. But I think you could pick between 3 or 4 players on the defensive side of the ball that for me would have been my player of the match for them. Who was yours?
It was a very close Nuhu. Obed Vargas, I got to give a shout out to because I thought he stood out in the best possible ways, especially at his age. Yep. In the first half, I really liked Manungu a lot.
Oh, sure. Oh, he was great too. He was
fun.
For him, I think the next step is like the final product, right? And because look, this kid, it's an incredible story. He came to the club 2 years ago. It sounded like the plan was to sign him to the first team. And they went on a preseason trip. He got an eye infection. And eventually, complications of that eventually led to him losing all of his sight in his left eye. He is blind in his left eye. And it sounds like that kind of process delayed his signing to the first team. And so he was Tacoma Defiance, had a couple stints this summer as a short-term loanee. We actually did his Sounders debut. It was against the Galaxy at Lumen Field. And it was one of those things where, early on in the season, teams love short-term loans. And the PR guys, like communication staff, will come to the booth, an hour before the game and like, hey, this guy, or 2 hours before the game, this guy, we're signing on a short-term loan. He's going to be on the bench, and then we kind of scramble and Google and write up a little card of him because we weren't prepared for him. He's not on the roster.
Who is this guy?
Who's this guy? Yep. So that's what it was like with Georgie Manungu. And, most of the times those guys don't get in the game, but he comes on and we're like, whoa, like this kid he's blowing past everybody in the Galaxy defense and his debut, just like he did in the conference final. And the final moment wasn't there on that day either, right? Like he'd get into a dangerous spot and then it didn't, but you could tell that there's something there. And he has gotten much better, I think, on that final product, on delivering a dangerous ball once he beats a guy and gets to the byline. Still maybe needs a little bit more refinement in that moment, but he's a revelation, right? And with him and Paul Rothrock, I mean, they have two guys that are not TAM signings or not designated player signings that have so much confidence on the wing. And it's huge. Huge for our team in MLS to have those guys. I don't know that either of them are starters on a team that's going to like win MLS Cup again for Seattle, but to have those options off the bench in a salary cap league, right? Options that probably aren't costing you that much.
Yeah.
Incredibly important. I mean, look, Atlanta, you guys know, right? I mean, how much would you guys have loved over the past couple of years to have someone like him that you can bring off the bench for 30 minutes, or a Rothrock who can really provide you something, right? Like, he's a great player. He's a great story. And I look forward to seeing kind of how he progresses.
Yeah. He, as you were talking about him, it kind of reminds me a little bit. And again, I'm always, as a mainly Atlanta podcast, we have to bring it up now, but Edwin Mosquera was kind of that guy, I thought. Uh-oh. There we go. Go ahead.
Totally agree. He's been Edwin was a little inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
And he was sent on loan and he came back and it seemed like, he had that. But I think that's probably a fair comparison.
I think, there's definitely some refinement for both, but that's what you have to have. You have to have that depth in some way. Mm-hmm. All right. Jumping over to the other side.
Yeah.
The Eastern Conference, obviously we saw how that one played out, Orlando and Red Bulls. Ask you the same question. What was kind of your thought on that one? Because that one you weren't calling, so I don't know how much more you paid attention to it.
No, we kept an eye on it as we were getting ready for our game and then watched it, later, right? Yesterday. The Red Bulls, man, what a run for them. They're such a different team with Forsberg. They've now, they shut down Orlando. They shut down New York City. They shut down Columbus. Like it's a surprising run because they were not in great form to end the season. And it's, I'm just looking forward to talking to Sandro Schwartz this week. Like, is it as simple as Emil Forsberg? Like, is that just it? Because in the beginning of the year, they looked like this. Like, okay, yeah, this Red Bull team could finish top 4 in the East, and which is a big deal in the East, right? Like, you're starting to think, because all season long, it was the 3 in the East, right? Cincinnati, Columbus, Miami, and then Cincinnati when Miazga got hurt. Okay, are they really, are they really there, or is it just Columbus and Miami? But then I think for the first couple of months of the year, it was like, wait, are the Red Bulls also there in that tier? And then Forsberg got hurt, and they decidedly were not. And then Forsberg comes back, and they are again. So like it's been an incredible run from them. They they've switched up their formation, and I mentioned that a few minutes ago, 5-10 minutes ago. They've been playing with 3 in the back with the Nealis brothers on either side of Reyes. But and you've got John Tolkien as your left wing back, right? And John Tolkien likes to go forward. Well, are you gonna structure it that way with Gabriel Peck and the Galaxy on that right wing? Like, there could be some space there. Nealis can cover it a little bit, but curious if Sandro Schwartz, I assume he will keep it because it's been so successful for them and stay with the system. But Brian Schmetzer made a distinct decision to change back to the 4 because of how good the Galaxy are on the wing, and to bring Nuhu on as like that, just 1v1 on Peck, right? So there's a decision there, I think, for Sandro Schwartz to make. But yeah, getting back to that Eastern Conference final, just impressed with, I think, just the Red Bulls, how they were able to limit Orlando, who I really believed in. I mean, I thought Orlando was, before the upsets, I thought Orlando was a contender in the Eastern Conference. I love their midfield of Cartagena and Araujo. But the Red Bulls, man, They're on a run. And look, it's a wonderful story that they're doing it with local kids. They started 5 guys from New York and New Jersey. They started a midfield of Edelman and Stroud. Like, they got Tolkien, they've got the Nealis brothers. That's awesome, man. In a league that has, there's so many ways to success in this league. Most teams try to bring in from the outside and big money signings. And the Rebels with Forsberg, they added that. They've needed that. It's not a unique statement from me, but everybody has seen they've needed that over the past few years. But to still have that in their DNA where they have local guys, young kids, homegrown kids, or, Dylan Nealis, I think, isn't technically a homegrown, right? Because he was drafted in camp, but, he's a homegrown kid. To be able to do that is awesome. And it's special. And again, I look forward to talking to those guys this week about what it means to bring the Red Bulls to this point where they've only been once before in their history in 29 years. When MLS started in 1996, like a league like that, you expect your big markets, your big cities to be successful. And, you expect the Metro Stars, as they were in the Galaxy, to be competing for MLS Cups. Not every year, it's right, but like to be big clubs, big markets, big teams. The Galaxy lived up to that, and they have lived up to that. Now, the past 10 years have been different, but for the first 20 years of MLS, they lived up to it. Wasn't always a championship season for them. They had dips, but holistically over 20 years, they were the most successful team. They won 5 MLS Cups, and they had David Beckham, they had Robbie Keane, Landon Donovan. They lived up to the big market Los Angeles. The New York, New Jersey Metro Stars and now the Red Bulls have not. And even when bringing in Thierry Henry, right, and bringing in big stars, they still didn't. They didn't win the trophies. They have not won MLS Cup. So for now, these local kids, right, to have that kind of burden of this organization baked into them, to be the ones who brought him there for the second time, it's pretty cool. I know it would mean a lot for them to get over that hump and to win it. And that's such an intriguing storyline for me heading into this game is the 2 original big market clubs in MLS. One has lived up to it. One is not. Can the one that is not finally get over that hump?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Orlando in that Eastern Conference Final. You talked about, the expectations on them, and, they've had an interesting season. I think before the season, a lot of us predicted that they would be competing for the Shield, that they'd be near the top.
Yeah.
They had the slow start. Like, it was like, what is happening in Orlando?
Yeah.
And then mid-season, you have the adjustments that they make, and suddenly they're kind of unstoppable. They go on a run, and now they make it to the Eastern Conference Final, and they just can't get over that hump. I wanted to ask you, what was Orlando missing in that game? And I was talking to Tyler before you came on a little bit. I mentioned, I thought Ojeda was a little bit far up for my liking. I think he should have been a little bit deeper, pulling the strings as he typically does, but he looked to me almost like a false 9. I don't know. What did you see in the game? What was Orlando missing?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I don't know that Ojeda's ever been a true 10, right? I mean, I believe in Argentina, he was more of a winger, and he certainly, or a false, kind of a second forward, and he put up a ton of numbers. I think for Godoy Cruz, right? And so maybe it's a 10, maybe that's the answer, but they, with Pereira the past few years, they had a more traditional 10, and there's a thought that maybe Ladero could fill that, but I don't think at this stage in his career he's the guy to do it in these stages. And look, when they made the decision to play Ojeda in that role, and Ladero to the bench, and Muriel to the bench, and McGuire to the bench, and Enrique starting, it worked so well for them in the regular season, but it's a little different in the playoffs, I think. The Red Bulls did a great job defensively. The Orlando City had a great season. They made it to the conference. I shouldn't say they had a great season. They pulled out of a rough start. They turned it into, I think, a very good season. And getting to the conference final and hosting a conference final is a big deal. And I do think there is something to, as a club, as an organization, having to get over a hump in a way. And for Seattle, this is kind of going back to a storyline that we talked about in the Western Conference Final. For Seattle, that hump over their first 6 years in the league were the Galaxy. And they never really got over that hump they never had to kind of go through that hump, I guess. Like the Galaxy beat them a couple times in conference finals. And then in 15, the Sounders did beat them in the playoffs, but then lost to Dallas. The Timbers went on and won MLS Cup. But from then, and then the Galaxy dipped and the Sounders went to the top. But it was like kind of like the Bulls and the bad boy Pistons. Like you kind of have to figure out how to get there. And I think Orlando City's just still in that stage. And like the Red Bulls are not a team, not a group here, right? That you would say like know how to do it. But they've been to 15 straight playoffs and they've been to 0 MLS Cups until now in those 15 straight playoffs, right? So maybe a little bit of that was them getting over the hump too. So I don't think it's a terribly disappointing season for Orlando. I think they have to figure out the number 9 situation in the offseason. Is it Enrique? You've paid McGuire, you've paid Muriel. Muriel didn't really work as a signing. What do you do at the 10? But I think you have a really good, solid base, back line. I don't know about Gillespie. He was great at the end of the year, but I thought the beginning of the year he was beginning to show that he was a little past it. I mean, I think they played at Atlanta early in the season, right? And we did that game and they were floundering, man. And they, everybody looked like a shell of themselves. Again, they pulled that together. I think the attack, right? A 10, a true 10, maybe, and a 9. There's a lot of teams in the league that'll say that, right? Yeah. But I think that's probably where they're looking. And I'm curious about the 9, right? I'm curious about Duncan McGuire. Like his story, his past 12 months are ridiculous. Yeah. Like he was on a plane and flew to England. And I'm sure while he was on that plane was getting text messages that the deal's off. And then he's staying and the deal's on. And then it's a loan, right? He stays in the country. The deal's on as a loan. And then there's a clerical error. What a mess. And then he comes back but he signs an extension. So he gets a new deal with Orlando, but then he's not even starting by the end of the year. So interesting time, but something to build on for me in Orlando. Definitely, continuing to build, and it would surprise me if they're not, similarly contending next year in the East. I'm not saying they're going to win the East. I'm not saying they're going to really contend with Miami and Columbus, who I think will still be the 2 favorites heading into next year, regardless of what happens on Saturday. But I still think that they'll contend to be, that top 4 and potentially right back here again a year from now.
They feel like a team that really is 1 or 2 pieces away from just getting it together. And you can't win games if you don't score goals. And we mentioned it as well. Like in the Atlanta game, Atlanta didn't play a great game at all, but Orlando didn't play a great game either. They just played it slightly better than Atlanta did.
Sure.
They put shots on goal.
All right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's kind of funny how that works. So I guess jumping back over to Red Bulls and then to kind of tie it all up with MLS Cup, you have this big time clash. You said, the 2 kind of old school teams, East Coast, West Coast, the biggest cities on each side. Like there's a lot to be excited about here. Do you still consider, though, everything considered, like all of it with Ricky Pooch, all that, LA Galaxy has got to be the favorite, right?
Oh, I'm not a betting man, and I don't look at the odds.
And I'm not asking you to predict.
No, I'm not going to predict. I would never predict the game that I call. But yeah, sure. I think definitely they're the favorites, right? Again, what I mean, like I imagine the betting odds have them as a favorite.
Yeah,
I don't know. I imagine our win probability on our broadcast, the computers that their analytics will have the Galaxy as the favorite, even without Ricky Pooch for sure. But the Red Bulls have gone on the road 3 times in the playoffs and won 3 games. They're the only team in MLS history to win 3 road games. They can win a 4th. Again, 3 had never been done. The Chicago Fire 98, I think, won 2 road games, and then they won MLS Cup in a neutral site in the Rose Bowl. So I've seen it out there sometimes that they won 3, but that's not really accurate. To go into another team's building, right, and win 3 games in front of their crowd is different. And the Rebels have already done that, and now they're going to have to try to do it for a 4th time. I don't think they'll be fazed by it. They've got, like I said, young homegrowns that are up for it. And then they've got veteran leader in Emil Forsberg, who's seen everything. But yeah, sure. Galaxy will be the favorite, but I think the Rebels are fine with that. Right. I think they'll be fine to kind of fly under the radar and let all the talk be about the glitz and the glamour of this high scoring, high flying, 85 goals, regular season, postseason combined LA Galaxy. How are they going to deal without Ricky Puig, right? I mean, that's going to be all the talk. That's going to be all the questions. They're going to be asked questions this week about that, and not necessarily about themselves. And they will have none of the pressure will be on the Red Bulls on Saturday. I do think the pressure will be on the Galaxy. They're probably okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, will the Red Bulls have to rename Red Bull Arena Sandro Schwartz Arena if they win MLS Cup? I mean, look, this guy comes into the league, right?
Yeah,
this is his first season in MLS, and he. I mean, Red Bulls have never really been, I don't want to say like favorites for MLS Cup, but you know, they've certainly made a compelling argument at this point. They've made it this far.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in a sense that it follows, you know, last season it wasn't Nancy's first season in MLS, but it was his first season with Columbus, and he took them to an MLS Cup. Do you think, you know, at this point, you know, how important has Sandro Schwartz been to the Red Bulls making it as far as they have been, and you know, potentially getting that first MLS Cup in club history?
Absolutely. He's been a wonderful addition to this league as a manager, right? I think they clearly got it correct. The Red Bulls did in bringing over Sandro Schwartz. He deserves a lot of credit for it, right? He deserves a lot of credit for this run. He, you know, tweaking the tactics and changing the system in the playoffs. He did it, I think, in the second to last game of the year. And then went back on decision. I think it was Atlanta, right? I think he did it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Well, I'll know by Saturday for sure. But so, you know, and then went back for decision day, went back to 4 in the back, and then postseason, boom, straight 5 in the back. And it's worked, right? I think they have even more than normal. I think they have conceded the ball, right? They have gone maybe a little bit more in the playoffs to the Red Bull way that we think of, because he did try to, like, it's still heavy metal soccer. I mean, he's a Jurgen Klopp disciple. He played with and then for Jurgen Klopp at Mainz in Germany. So he's like that. That's kind of where he comes from. It's that kind of heavy metal football, so to speak. But he clearly tried to implement a little bit more possession or just comfort on the ball in the Red Bulls this year, right? Like, when you do win the ball, it doesn't need to be go in 10 seconds, 5-10 seconds. Like, try to be a little more comfortable. It does seem in the postseason that they've maybe walked that back a little. I mean, I think it's like 37% possession in the postseason for the Red Bulls. And look, they played 2 games against Columbus. You know, in a game against New York City, you like to have the ball as well. And Orlando, it was a little, I think it was 56-44, but the other ones were lopsided. They have the lowest possession of any team in the league, or in the postseason. So like he deserves credit where I'm going with this for going back to that. It's gotten him here. It's gotten him to MLS Cup, and they're going to do it against a team that loves to have the ball, right? In the Galaxy, where it's 60% possession in these playoffs, in their 4 games. So it's 2 teams that I think will be very comfortable in their ways, that know their ways. There's not going to be that, I don't think, that kind of battle of like whose way wins out, in the sense of like, if you have 2 teams that each want the ball, right? Whoever has the ball is going to probably win that game. Whoever can be the one who controls it. In this way, they're each going to go their way. I do think Ricky Puig is a big loss for the Galaxy because of that Red Bull style and because of how Sandro Schwartz has even ramped that up. You know, Ricky's the guy that can break that pressure better than maybe anybody in MLS. And they're not going to have him, but they'll still have plenty of talent, plenty of guys who are comfortable on the ball, who can maybe deal with that pressure. Greg Vanney said to Sasha Kleshin on the postgame show, on the interview on Saturday night, he was looking forward to what he thinks will be a more open game because the Red Bulls will not sit back, right? So I saw a question, I think it was from YouTube, of is it fair to say they're playing a similar style to Seattle? I don't think so, because Seattle sit back, right? I mean, they're so good. Both teams have been great defensively, particularly of late, but the Sounders, they sit back and they're like, just break us down, man. And it was hard for everybody to do. The Red Bulls aren't quite doing that. So again, Greg Vanney acknowledged that in the postgame interview, saying the Red Bulls will come out and they press. That's the Red Bull way. and that I think the Galaxy think that plays to them a little bit better, right? Because that's where they're good, when there's space for them to get off and get running, and Peck and Paintsill can get room behind, and Jovalic in the middle. Now, he said that before, at least it was public, that Ricky Puig was out for this game, right? So I wonder if he's feeling a little differently without his main man on the ball. But I think it'll be look, a fantastic and really intriguing clash of styles, and Sandro Schwartz deserves the credit in New York for implementing the style and at least getting the tweaks right in that style for this postseason run.
I feel like Red Bulls is playing more refined soccer.
Yeah,
like it's Red Bulls, but it's more refined. And
agreed. Yep.
It's fun to see. And I think on top of that, and this kind of goes to Edgar a little bit with what he was saying, and Edgar, thank you, by the way. But one name we haven't mentioned is Carlos Coronel.
Yeah,
and how massive he's been. What is your take on him going into MLS Cup?
He's been great, right? He's been great in the playoffs, and it helps to have an informed goalkeeper. We've seen that in many postseasons. We've seen it in this postseason, right? Stefan Fry feeling like he kind of single-handedly brought Seattle past LAFC. Nobody knows it better than you guys and everybody in Atlanta, and what Brad did against Miami, all-time playoff performance in that series. And that's with giving him a goal in game 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's still an all-time.
Had to give him something to play with.
Exactly right. It's an all-time playoff performance, that series. It will be remembered, I think, for many years for what he did to help Atlanta pass Inter Miami. And Red Bulls have gotten that from Carlos Coronel. I mean, he made 3 straight penalty saves in that game 2 against Columbus. If any of those had gone, well, if the first 2 had gone in, then they're out, and then the final one won it, right? Not out. They lose the game. They go back to Columbus for game 3, which they wanted to avoid, of course. It makes sense, right? And then he's been very good, I think in these last 2, and made a big save on Facu Torres this match. I think Torres needs to score. Like I said about Rusnak, right? In the
100%.
chance that Seattle had, like, you've got to score. And he's your big player. And Torres scores that goal, it's a different game. And now Orlando, maybe we're sitting here talking about Orlando, LA. And if Rusnak scores that goal, maybe we're talking about Orlando, Seattle. But ultimately, these big players didn't, in kind of similar chances, to be honest. It's a good save from Coronel. But to me, Torres has got to score. It helps to have an informed goalkeeper, and Coronel is that. And he's going up against a guy who John McCarthy did not have a ton to do against Seattle. John McCarthy can be inconsistent at times, but John McCarthy is an MLS Cup MVP, right? And he came on and it was basically a penalty shootout that won him MLS Cup MVP 2 years ago for LAFC. But still, he's played in big games. He's played in big moments. He knows how to handle the pressure. He is a confident guy. He's a character. He'll be up for it. And how wild would it be if John McCarthy wins an MLS Cup for LAFC and the LA Galaxy in a 3-year span? Always fun when something like that happens.
Dude will never buy a drink in Los Angeles again.
That's right. Well, yeah. Or depending on what bar he goes into, he might have the drink thrown at him or dumped on him. But no, it's interesting. And Coronel's been great for New York to bring it back to that for sure. And he'll have to be, I think he'll have to be an MLS Cup, right? Stefan Fry made really one difficult save in the game. It was on Jovalic's first half chance. It was a volley. He didn't hit it great, but Fry had to scramble, and it was harder than it looked.
The wrong way.
I think, one of those is harder than it looked. But it wasn't like the LAFC game, where he was just kind of bombarded. And credit to the Sounders defense for that's because of his teammates. I think the Galaxy will have more chances in this game, and I think Coronel will have something to do. And I do think he won't have to be perfect, but I think he'll have to be good for the Red Bulls to win this MLS Cup.
Yeah, I think both goalkeepers are going to have to end up being heroes in their own respect. I think both teams have decent attacks in their own ways. Jake, just one last question, really. Now that we know that Ricky Puig is not going to be in MLS Cup, he probably would have been one of your answers here, but I'm taking him away, and I'm also taking the other easy one away. I'm taking Emil Forsberg away. Yeah. Who are your two players to watch in this game? One from each team.
For the Galaxy, I'll say Edwin Cerrillo, because I think he's gonna get pressured a lot, and he's gonna. There might be some more without Ricky there, particularly more burden on him to kind of deal with that. He's been a fantastic number 6 for them, and he's been, he's taken a starting spot. He's put his name on that starting 11 team sheet from Greg Vanney in pen, and guys like Gaston Brugman and Mark Delgado have not been right. Delgado's been starting a lot, but it's Delgado or Royce. It's not, Delgado or Cerrillo, right? Like, Cerrillo's the one that's there, which has been impressive, and he's been great defensively. But he might have, a little bit to do with ball security with how the Red Bulls play when he gets on the ball. So I'll put him from that defensive standpoint, and then Joveljic in the attack. I think he's a 9 that will get chances, and it's in a big game like this, he'll be up for it, and he'll, just like in the conference final, he'll want to. He'll want to put his stamp on this MLS Cup, and I think he'll have the opportunity to. For New York, man, it's the young guys. I'll throw John Tolkin there from a defensive standpoint for what I spoke about earlier. It'll depend how they set up, and it'll depend on who Sandro Schwartz, and how he decides to approach defending Gabriel Peck specifically. But if Tolkin's going to have a lot of that burden 1v1, it's a difficult task for a guy who's as one of the best left foots for a left back in Major League Soccer. Can he do it defensively against the best winger in MLS? I think in Gabriel Peck could go a long way for the Red Bulls from a defensive standpoint. And then in the attack, man, I'll go with their strikers. And so I'm, it's easy. I'm picking the strikers as well, but Dante Van Zyre has 2 goals in these playoffs. He stepped up in moments for them in these playoffs. He has, for the past 2 seasons, not quite lived up to, I think, what people expected from a guy who scored a ton of goals in Europe and was a DP signing. And now, okay, everybody will forget all of that if he can have a big moment in this MLS Cup. And if it's not him, and if, say, an Elias Manuel who comes off the bench, right? Kind of similar. Like we've been looking for this. Is there going to be a 9 on the Red Bulls that's going to step up and be a real goal scoring threat? And they haven't really had one. These guys haven't. But this is a moment when they could. And they have been, both Manuel and both Van Zyre have in moments. Can they find a moment in the most important game, that the club has been in almost 20 years and in over 15 years? I think they'll need that from one of their strikers, or maybe it's even a Corey Burke off the bench, but from one of their strikers in this MLS Cup.
Awesome. Well, Jake, as usual, man, we appreciate it. I know we kept you a little long. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
It's all I'm going to talk about for the next 5 days. So
I know you're in it now.
Let's go. Hey, love it. Can't wait for it, man.
December 7th, 4 p.m., right?
4 p.m. Eastern time is when the game begins. 2:30 Eastern time coverage will start with MLS Countdown live from Dignity Health Sports Park. Kevin Egan. All the Atlanta fans love themselves some Kevin Egan. You're getting an hour and a half pregame of Kevin Egan, and then halftime, and then postgame. So you got to tune in at 2:30 for it, and it's free. I should say this as well. It's free on Apple TV, so you don't need MLS Season Pass. You can tune in and you can watch it for free no matter where you are in the world.
So tell all your friends. Tell everybody. Best of luck on the call, man. Thanks, as always, it's a pleasure. We appreciate it, buddy.
Always a pleasure of mine. Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure of mine. Great to talk to you guys.
Yeah, buddy. Have a good one. Good stuff. Good stuff, man. I think a lot of the things that he hit on, and we'll kind of double back on some of it, but it's a really interesting kind of concept that you have like these 2 big time cities, right? The 2 biggest cities, really, 2 biggest markets. And yet one of them is just looked at as like this team that almost shouldn't even be there, while the other one is the one that should absolutely have been there, and people have been calling it for months. But it's just an interesting concept, because you always think of New York, right? Like New York traditionally is like the big time sports teams, everything, unless you're a Mets fan. But sorry, I had to.
Did get Sydney there.
Yeah, had to poke some at him. I don't know if he's watching somewhere from Alabama driving back from Thanksgiving, but hey, the Bills did well last night, though that's not New York City, obviously, but still. I'm gonna keep poking at him.
New York.
It's New York State. Who cares?
It's somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah. So what are your I guess what's your prediction? I wasn't gonna ask him what his prediction was, it's obviously not proper.
Yeah.
But what's your prediction?
I didn't even come prepared. I'm gonna say it's just hard to, even without Ricky Pooch, it's hard to pick against the Galaxy, honestly. So I'm gonna say 2-1 Galaxy.
Okay.
And
I was debating.
Sorry, I'm gonna put a little bit more Tommy's here. He's at Wicked.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. He definitely enjoys musicals, huh?
Yeah.
Right. But I was gonna say I think you definitely get a goal from Peck because he's just been on fire. Absolutely amazing. And then from the other side, I think the easy answer is Forsberg. So I'm not gonna say Forsberg. I'm gonna say Lewis Morgan, comeback player of the year, and he had 13 goals this season. I think he'll be important in their biggest game. He's definitely going to show up. So I've got Lewis Morgan. Let's go.
I like it. I'm going to say 3-1 Galaxy. The Red Bull side of it, I think the goal is going to come off with another set piece, because we didn't really talk about that a lot, but the set piece goal that they had against Orlando was, I mean, when it first went in, I thought John Tolkien had just hit it that good, but it was kind of at that back post. The header, it only has about a foot to make it past the net. I mean, it kind of came off the woodwork a little bit, but I'll give Tolkien an assist. I don't know who's scoring the goal.
Andres Reyes.
What's that?
Andres Reyes, Colombian center back. He's been, by the way, I wrote about him for MLS in Espanol. Little plug there for those of you Spanish speakers out there. But yeah, a couple of articles on him already, because he's been huge, not just in the playoffs, but in the regular season for the Red Bulls. He's been part of the huge defensive improvement that they have had over this season. And so, no, huge credit to him and a deserved goal. He was actually man of the match in the conference semifinal in the Hudson River Derby. So, no, I mean, he's a good player, and also, I mean, just the ball that John Tolkien put him. You said, you thought he just hit the ball that well. I think he did. I think he did hit the ball that well, that it was basically like an air tap in at that point. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
Reyes really just had to nose dive into the goal for that to go in, and at the end of the day, it's those fine margins, right? We talked about that game. It's the fine margins, and this game, I don't think the margins are going to be that fine. I feel like it's going to be a mostly Galaxy controlled game, just because I just think they have better overall quality, even without Ricky Pooch. They've got so much other, attacking contributors that it's hard to look past them. So no, I think if the Red Bulls get set pieces are going to be huge for the Red Bulls, in my opinion. And that's where, John Tolkien, as Jake was talking about, Reyes, some of their other players that can be good in the air, are going to be key in this final.
Yeah. And I, we have to bring up too, the stat that's popped up at least once every week before a match with the Galaxy in the past couple of months is their set piece defending has not been good. And if the Red Bulls are going to have more than a good chance, it's going to be coming from taking advantage of those set piece opportunities, because you can. But again, it's hard to bet against the Galaxy. Edgar, again, thank you. Thank you for the donation. Appreciate it. He also pointed out LA hasn't lost to New York teams in a major championship game since the Yankees beat the Dodgers in 1978.
So they're due.
They're due.
Sorry, Edgar.
Colonel said you're both wrong. Galaxy hasn't seen a defense like what the Red Bulls bring. And Colonel is absolutely cheering for the Red Bulls in this one.
Sure, man.
Hey, I mean, stranger things have happened. Oh, and he's saying 0-2. Red Bulls. Wow. Hey, Twitter would be on fire the day after if they shut out LA Galaxy at Dean and Hale Sports Park. That would be a wild, wild time.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to happen, Colonel, but
talk about an underdog story if they do manage all of the upsets, every single one. Yep. You take out last season's champion, you take out, the winner of the Western Conference, you take out everyone. That's kind of what we over on the Atlanta side thought Atlanta was going to end up doing after they took down Miami, They
were squeaking closer and closer.
The FEA lives on in Red Bulls.
Yeah, it's just jumped from one body to another. And then that's where I have to be a little selfish and say, like, as a sports fan, I've never been that guy that, like, in a division in the NFL, right, or in a conference in MLS, like, if my team is out, some fans are like, well, I want the other team in my division to go on and win it all. No, I don't want that, because I'll only want the only successful team in the Eastern Conference to be Atlanta United, period. That's just how I am. I'm sorry. I just think the Galaxy is a better team, and I think they're going to win. Omar said, screw the farm teams. Jay said the Red Bulls are good, but Cardinals overhyping them too much. I mean, it's MLS, right? This is not the Premier League. If this were, Liverpool versus whatever version of Everton wants to show up, like, we could have having that conversation. But no, it's anybody's game. It really is. It always is in MLS, as we have seen with Atlanta.
Didn't we just see? Yeah, I was going to say, didn't we just see the 9th seed take out, the Supporters Shield champions, and then, just all of the upsets happen. LAFC down, Columbus down. Like, that's the cool thing about this league, and I'll say it again and again and again. That's the cool thing. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The parity is the word that defines MLS and sets it apart from a lot of the top leagues in the world. And that's why you don't see one team winning the title like for 5 straight years, like you do in England, like you do in Germany, like you do, in Spain. It's 2 teams that share that title.
Yeah.
Here you rarely get teams that win it with that frequency. And so, I think that's a cool part about MLS.
Absolutely. All right. Again, scarvesandspikes.com. Go check it out. Get you all your Atlanta news that's going to be coming through. Again, we'll be doing stuff for MLS Cup as well. And whenever the men's national team, women's national team, U.S. soccer stuff is going on, we try to cover that as much as possible, especially when it relates to Atlanta, which it hasn't in the past couple of months. But everything going on there, Tommy said Wicked is great, just so y'all know.
It's Wicked?
Huh? It's Wicked.
Yeah, see?
I like it. Huh?
I have to bring in a pun somehow.
You're always good for one at least. Always. Omar said, y'all got any more of them coach rumors?
Pep Guardiola. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. He might get sacked.
Might get sacked in the morning?
Yeah. Show up in Atlanta the day after. No, can't say that I have heard any other coaching rumors for Atlanta. I mean, all the names that y'all have heard have been out there. I know we saw the David Moyes thing getting thrown around a little bit. But
that's not happening, by the way.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, guess is as good as ours at this point. The moment we find out something and we can tell you, you'll know. I promise. Patreon. Go join the Patreon. Patreon.com/scarvesandspikes. Go jump on there with us. Hang out with us in the Discord. Got all the content coming. We're planning some pretty fun stuff. We've got player ratings video that we're going to try to do this week. And we're going to be talking all in the off season, doing content just for Patreon as well. Some of it will be just fun, having a good time. And then others going to be informative stuff, everything that we can give you guys, because we appreciate the support as usual. And as always, final thoughts, Henry, anything in particular you want to throw out there?
Help us by filling out the survey. I put it out on Twitter earlier this morning, but yeah, we are sending out a survey, Xavi to Atlanta. Yeah, just to kind of get y'all's thoughts. This is a full season of coverage now coming to an end, and we want to know what y'all think of the shows, of the website, the articles we have there, Patreon, just everything. Your opinion matters to us, because at the end of the day, we're making the content for y'all. So whatever makes y'all happy, that's what we want to focus on, whatever y'all want to see. So please help us out by filling that out. It doesn't take long at all. We really want to hear from y'all, what you think we're doing right, what you think we could improve on, just all that kind of stuff for us to come back even stronger in 2025.
Absolutely. I dropped the link and it'll show up on Facebook and YouTube. It's already on Twitter. But yeah, we just want to hear from you guys. Constructive criticism. We want to get things as fun and informative as we possibly can. We're not trying to be up here on Mondays and Wednesdays, like ABC News Tonight, and just talking about news. Like, we're trying to have fun with it, but bringing you guys stuff. We're at all the games. We try to bring you guys, exclusives and interviews, and obviously news as soon as we get it, from the club or wherever. But we always want to know what we can do differently and do better and everything else. So we appreciate it. It means a lot to us, and we're doing it because we care, and we want y'all to have a fun place to get the news from, for sure. So, with that being said, we will be back Wednesday with any other. That's going to be the full Atlanta show as normal. So, whatever news happens to drop between now and then, if any, we'll be talking about it. We'll be talking about everything else related to Atlanta, and I'm sure we'll be talking about MLS Cup even then too. So, y'all be back Wednesday at 7. We'll dive into it, and that's all I got. That's all I got.
Thanks for watching, y'all. It's been real.
It has been real. Appreciate it, y'all. Three hours. Is that like how they did in Titanic, where like they gave you a bathroom break and had to swap out the film?
What are we talking about?
Oh my God, I forgot how young you are. In Titanic, in the theaters, like they actually legitimately had like an intermission and they had to swap out the film. And then when they brought it to VHS, shut up, Henry. It was 2 VHS tapes.
Dude, you know what I'm gonna say, right?
What?
You know what I'm gonna say.
Go ahead, buddy.
You're old.
Shut up.
Thanks for hopping on, y'all.
We love you, even if Henry is a hater.
I'm not a hater. I'm just not old.
Whatever.
Yet.
Of experience.